The rain fell in a steady drizzle over Mount Auburn Cemetery, turning the October afternoon into a watercolor of grays and muted greens. Eleanor Whitmore stood at the edge of her husband's grave, her hands folded in front of her, watching as they lowered Robert into the ground. She didn't cry. People probably thought she was in shock. Or maybe they thought she'd cried herself dry over the past week. Neither was true. Eleanor Whitmore had cried exactly twice since her husband's death. Once when she'd found him collapsed in his study, and once 3 days later when she'd read his autopsy report alone in their bedroom. Both times, she'd cried for reasons no one else would understand. "Protect yourself, Ellie." Those were Robert's last words to her, whispered as the paramedics loaded him into the ambulance. At the time, she'd thought he was delirious. Now, standing here watching dirt fall onto his casket, she understood exactly what he'd meant. "Mom?" Eleanor felt a gentle hand on her elbow. Tommy, her son, stood beside her with an umbrella, trying to shield her from the rain, even though she was already soaked through. "I'm fine, honey," she said softly. "You're shivering. Let's get you to the car." In a minute, Eleanor's gaze drifted across the small gathering of mourners. About 30 people had shown up. Robert's business associates, a few old friends, the neighbors from their street in Brookline. And there, standing under a large black umbrella about 20 feet away, were Jessica and Brett. Her daughter wore a designer black dress, Chanel, if Eleanor wasn't mistaken, and heels that had no business being worn in a cemetery. Brett, her son-in-law, stood beside her in an expensive suit, checking his watch for the 3rd time in 5 minutes. Eleanor watched as Jessica whispered something to Brett. He nodded and pulled out his phone, angling it toward the grave. He's taking a picture of the funeral, Eleanor realized with a cold jolt. Of his father-in-law's funeral. "Mom, please," Tommy urged again. "You're going to catch pneumonia out here." This time, Eleanor let him lead her toward the parking lot. As they passed Jessica and Brett, her daughter looked up. "Mom, wait." Eleanor stopped, turned slowly. Jessica's eyes were dry, her makeup perfect. "We need to talk about Dad's estate. The lawyer called me yesterday and—" "Not here, Jessica," Eleanor said quietly. "Not at your father's grave." "But Mom, I said not here." Something flickered across Jessica's face. Anger, maybe, or frustration, but she masked it quickly with a concerned smile. "Of course. You're right. I'm sorry. We'll talk later." Eleanor nodded and continued walking. Behind her, she heard Brett mutter to Jessica, "Jesus, she's really going to make this difficult, isn't she?" "Shut up," Jessica hissed back. "Not here." Tommy must have heard it too, because his grip on Eleanor's arm tightened. But he didn't say anything. Neither did Eleanor. "Let them think I didn't hear," she thought. "Let them think I'm just a grieving old widow who can barely hear over the rain." Voiceover, Eleanor's internal monologue. "People say that when your spouse dies, you cry. I did cry, but not for the reasons they think. I cried because I knew the war wasn't over. It was just beginning." 2 weeks later, Eleanor sat in her kitchen with a cup of tea, watching the morning light stream through the windows. The house felt too big now, too quiet. Robert's lawyer, Martin Walsh, had called yesterday to schedule a formal reading of the will. Eleanor already knew what was in it. Robert had showed her the final draft 3 months ago, but the process still needed to be followed. The doorbell rang. Eleanor set down her teacup and walked to the front door, expecting Martin. Instead, she found a courier holding a manila envelope. "Eleanor Whitmore?" "Yes." "You've been served." He handed her the envelope and walked away before she could respond. Eleanor stood in the doorway for a moment, then slowly opened the envelope. Petition for guardianship and conservatorship. Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Suffolk County Probate and Family Court. Jessica Whitmore Sullivan, petitioner versus Eleanor Whitmore, respondent. Eleanor's hands didn't shake as she read through the legal document. She'd seen thousands of legal filings in her life, though that was a long time ago. This one was particularly creative, she had to admit. The petition claimed, 1. That Eleanor Whitmore, age 72, was suffering from significant cognitive decline and possible dementia. 2. That she was no longer capable of managing her financial affairs or making sound decisions regarding her $68 million estate. 3. That Eleanor had manipulated her late husband during his final illness to change his will. 4. That immediate conservatorship was necessary to protect Mrs. Whitmore from financial exploitation and self-harm. Eleanor set the papers down on the kitchen counter and laughed. It was a short, bitter sound. Oh, Jessica, you really think you're the first person to try this? The doorbell rang again. This time it was Tommy, breathless and angry. Mom, did you get it? Did they really? He stopped when he saw her face. You got it. I did. This is insane. Jess is trying to have you declared incompetent? Tommy paced the kitchen like a caged animal. What the hell is wrong with her? She wants the money, Eleanor said simply. But Dad left her $100,000. And Grandma's ring? That thing's worth at least $50,000. Apparently that's not enough. Tommy ran his hands through his hair. Okay, we need to hire a lawyer. A good one. I know a guy from college who… Tommy, sit down. Mom, this is serious. If she wins this, she'll control everything. Your money, your house, your medical decisions. Tommy, sit down. He sat reluctantly. Eleanor pulled out her phone and showed him something she'd downloaded that morning. Before you got here, I did a little research. Did you know Jessica's been making some interesting financial moves lately? What do you mean? 3 months ago, she took out a second mortgage on her house in Newton. Last month, she maxed out 2 credit cards. And 2 weeks ago, just days after your father died, she tried to access his business account. The bank flagged it as suspicious activity. Tommy's eyes widened. How do you know all this? Your father had access to Jessica's financial accounts. He was a co-signer on her first mortgage. When he died, those alerts started coming to my email instead. Eleanor's voice was calm, almost clinical. Your sister is drowning in debt, Tommy, and she thinks my money is her lifeboat. Jesus Christ. Tommy leaned back in his chair. So what do we do? Eleanor was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Do you remember that old saying your father used to love? When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time? Yeah? Your sister has shown me who she is. Now I'm going to respond accordingly. Meaning what? Eleanor smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Meaning I'm going to represent myself at the hearing, and I'm going to destroy her case so thoroughly that she'll wish she'd never filed it. Tommy stared at his mother like he'd never seen her before. Mom, how are you going to do that? You're not a lawyer. Eleanor didn't answer. Instead, she pulled out a cardboard box from under the kitchen table, one she'd retrieved from storage yesterday. Inside were dozens of old case files, legal textbooks, and court documents. And on top, a laminated card. Eleanor J. Whitmore, Assistant District Attorney, Suffolk County, licensed to practice law in Massachusetts. Tommy picked up the card with shaking hands. What the… Mom? You were a prosecutor? A long time ago. Why didn't you ever tell us? Because that life was over, or so I thought. Eleanor took the card from him, studying it. But apparently some things never really end. They just wait. The Suffolk County Probate Court was exactly as Eleanor remembered it. All dark wood paneling and fluorescent lights, the smell of old paper and anxiety thick in the air. She arrived 30 minutes early, wearing a simple gray suit she'd bought for Robert's funeral and carrying a leather briefcase that Tommy had given her last Christmas. She'd never used it until today. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and she wore minimal makeup. Look harmless, she'd told herself that morning. Let them underestimate you. Tommy was already waiting outside the courtroom, pacing nervously. Mom, I was worried you wouldn't… I'm here. She squeezed his hand. Just watch from the gallery. Don't react to anything no matter what happens. But trust me, honey. Inside the courtroom, Jessica and her legal team were already set up at the petitioner's table. Eleanor recognized the lead attorney immediately. Sarah Mitchell, one of Boston's rising stars in estate litigation. Young, ambitious, and expensive. 3 associate attorneys flanked her, all busy with laptops and documents. Jessica wore a navy blue dress and pearls, looking every inch the concerned daughter. Brett sat behind her in the gallery, watching Eleanor with cold calculation. Eleanor walked to the respondent's table and sat down alone. Sarah Mitchell glanced over, did a double take when she saw Eleanor had no attorney, then smiled slightly. The smile said, "This is going to be easier than I thought." "All rise!" Judge Patricia Blackwood entered the courtroom, her black robes swishing. She was in her mid-60s, with silver hair and sharp eyes that had seen every trick in the book. Eleanor watched as Judge Blackwood's gaze swept the room, paused on Eleanor's table, then moved on without a flicker of recognition. Good. Patricia was playing it professional. She doesn't remember me, Eleanor thought. Or she's pretending not to. Either way, I'm on my own. Be seated, Judge Blackwood said. This is case number 23P1847, Jessica Whitmore Sullivan, petitioner, versus Eleanor Whitmore, respondent. Petition for guardianship and conservatorship. She looked at Eleanor's empty table. Mrs. Whitmore, do you have legal representation? Eleanor stood. No, Your Honor. I'll be representing myself. A ripple of whispers went through the gallery. Sarah Mitchell stood quickly. Your Honor, if I may, this is highly irregular. Mrs. Whitmore's decision to proceed pro se only reinforces our concerns about her mental capacity. We're talking about a complex conservatorship case involving a $68 million estate. For her to think she can handle this alone demonstrates exactly the kind of impaired judgment we're alleging. Noted, Counselor, Judge Blackwood said dryly. But Mrs. Whitmore has the right to represent herself if she chooses. Mrs. Whitmore, do you understand that by going pro se, you'll be held to the same standards as an attorney? I do, Your Honor. Very well. Ms. Mitchell, you may present your opening statement. Sarah Mitchell stood, buttoned her jacket, and addressed the court with the confident air of someone who'd already won. Your Honor, this is a heartbreaking case. Jessica Whitmore Sullivan is here today, not because she wants to control her mother's money, but because she desperately wants to protect her mother from harm. Eleanor watched Jessica dab at her eyes with a tissue. Nice touch, she thought. The evidence will show that Eleanor Whitmore, at age 72, is suffering from significant cognitive decline. Over the past 6 months, her behavior has become increasingly erratic and concerning. She forgets basic information, gets lost in familiar places, and makes irrational financial decisions. Most alarmingly, just 3 weeks ago, Mrs. Whitmore transferred $200,000 to a complete stranger, money she can't explain and doesn't remember sending. Sarah paused for effect, then continued. Your Honor, Mrs. Whitmore is vulnerable. She's grieving, she's confused, and she's sitting on a massive fortune that makes her a target for exploitation. Her daughter is simply trying to ensure she's protected. Sarah sat down. Judge Blackwood looked at Eleanor. Mrs. Whitmore, any opening statement? Eleanor stood, placed her hands on the table, and spoke in a clear, steady voice. Your Honor, my daughter is correct about one thing. This is heartbreaking, but not for the reasons she claims. This isn't about protecting me. It's about stealing from me, and I intend to prove it. She sat down. Short, direct, no wasted words. Judge Blackwood's eyebrow rose slightly. Very well. Miss Mitchell, call your first witness. The petitioner calls Dr. Helen Foster. A woman in her 50s took the stand, professional, polished, wearing a tasteful suit and an expression of clinical concern. After being sworn in, Sarah Mitchell began her examination. Dr. Foster, what is your profession? I'm a clinical psychologist specializing in geriatric mental health. And did you conduct a psychiatric evaluation of Eleanor Whitmore? Yes, I did, on September 28th of this year. Can you describe your findings? Dr. Foster pulled out a report. Mrs. Whitmore exhibited several concerning signs during our session. She had difficulty remembering recent events, showed confusion about dates and times, and displayed what we call confabulation, filling in memory gaps with false information without realizing it. And in your professional opinion, doctor, is Mrs. Whitmore capable of managing her financial affairs? In my opinion, she would benefit from assistance. The early signs of dementia are clearly present. Sarah Mitchell nodded gravely and sat down. Your witness, Mrs. Whitmore. Eleanor stood, picked up a single piece of paper, and approached the witness stand. Dr. Foster, how long was our session? Approximately 45 minutes. 45 minutes. And based on that single 45-minute session, you diagnosed me with dementia? I said preliminary signs consistent with, yes or no, doctor. Was that your first and only time meeting me? Dr. Foster shifted slightly. Yes. And how much were you paid for that evaluation? I don't see how. How much, Dr. Foster? $15,000. A murmur went through the courtroom. Eleanor pulled out a document, a bank statement. Your Honor, I'd like to enter this as Exhibit A. This is a copy of Dr. Foster's bank records, obtained through legal discovery. It shows that she received a payment of $15,000 from Jessica Whitmore Sullivan on September 15th, 2 weeks before our alleged evaluation. The murmur became louder. Eleanor turned back to Dr. Foster. So let me get this straight. My daughter paid you $15,000 before you even met me. Then you met with me for 45 minutes. Then you wrote a report saying I have dementia. Does that about sum it up? I conducted a thorough and professional evaluation based on one session that was paid for in advance by the person who stands to gain from your diagnosis. Eleanor's voice was ice cold now. Tell me, doctor, what's the standard protocol for diagnosing dementia? How many sessions are typically required? Well, typically we'd recommend multiple sessions, cognitive testing, brain scans. How many sessions did you conduct with me? One, but how many cognitive tests did you administer? The circumstances didn't allow for... How many brain scans did you review? None, but So you diagnosed me with dementia based on a 45-minute conversation and a $15,000 check from my daughter? Eleanor let that hang in the air. No further questions. She walked back to her table. Sarah Mitchell was whispering urgently with her associates. Judge Blackwood looked at Dr. Foster. You're excused, doctor. As Dr. Foster left the stand, Eleanor could see Jessica's face turning red. Brett in the gallery had gone pale. Ms. Mitchell, Judge Blackwood said, call your next witness. Sarah stood, trying to recover. Your Honor, we'd like to enter video evidence. Over the past 2 months, Ms. Whitmore Sullivan has documented several concerning incidents involving her mother. A screen was set up. The first video showed Eleanor at what looked like a grocery store, appearing confused and disoriented. As you can see, Sarah narrated, Mrs. Whitmore appears lost and unable to find her way. Objection, Eleanor said calmly. May I? Judge Blackwood nodded. Eleanor stood. Your Honor, that video was taken on September 10th at the Whole Foods on Beacon Street. I was looking for a specific brand of tea that I usually buy at a different store. I asked an employee for help, found it, and checked out normally. The video conveniently cuts off before showing that. She pulled out a receipt. Here's my purchase receipt from that day, time-stamped 10 minutes after this video ends. I bought the tea, along with groceries for the week. Hardly the behavior of someone who's lost and confused. Another video played, this one showing Eleanor apparently struggling to remember her granddaughter's name. That video, Eleanor said, was taken the day after my husband's funeral. I was exhausted and grieving. Anyone might stumble over words in that state. It doesn't mean I have dementia. Video after video played, and Eleanor calmly explained each one. The supposed evidence began to look increasingly flimsy. Finally, Sarah played her trump card. Your Honor, we have evidence that Mrs. Whitmore made a highly suspicious financial transaction. On October 5th, she transferred $200,000 to an unknown recipient. She cannot explain this transaction, and it represents exactly the kind of financial vulnerability we're concerned about. Jessica was nodding, looking vindicated. Eleanor stood slowly. Your Honor, I can explain that transaction quite easily. The recipient wasn't a stranger. It was the Boston Children's Hospital Pediatric Cancer Fund. She pulled out a document, an official donation receipt on hospital letterhead. This is a thank you letter from Dr. Rachel Kim, director of the Pediatric Oncology Department. The $200,000 donation was made in my late husband's name. Robert's mother died of cancer when he was 12. This was something he always wanted to do but never got around to. So I did it for him. Eleanor's voice softened slightly. I'd like to note, Your Honor, that my daughter listed this as suspicious activity without ever asking me about it. If she truly cared about my well-being, wouldn't the first step be to simply ask me where that money went? The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Judge Blackwood looked at Sarah Mitchell. Counselor, do you have any other evidence? Sarah was shuffling through papers frantically. Your Honor, we'd like to request a continuance to gather additional... Denied. Judge Blackwood's voice was sharp. Ms. Mitchell, you brought an emergency petition before this court claiming Mrs. Whitmore was in immediate danger. You've presented paid testimony and edited videos as evidence. Mrs. Whitmore has systematically dismantled every claim. She turned to Eleanor. Mrs. Whitmore, do you have anything to add? Eleanor stood one final time. Your Honor, I practiced law in this county for 17 years. I know what real evidence looks like. What we've seen today isn't evidence. It's character assassination funded by desperation. My daughter wants my money, and she's willing to destroy my reputation to get it. That's not love. That's greed. Judge Blackwood nodded slowly. I've heard enough. This petition for guardianship and conservatorship is denied. Mrs. Whitmore has clearly demonstrated mental competency far exceeding what's required. She looked at Jessica. Ms. Whitmore Sullivan, you have the right to refile. but I strongly advise you to consider whether that's truly in your mother's best interest." The gavel came down with a sharp crack. Court is adjourned. Outside the courthouse, Tommy was waiting with barely contained excitement. "Mom, that was incredible! You destroyed them! Where did you learn—" He stopped when he saw Eleanor's face. She looked exhausted. "Let's just go home, honey." "But Mom, you won! Don't you want to—" "Tommy, please." Her voice was quiet but firm. "I need to sit down." They drove back to Brookline in silence. Once inside the house, Eleanor sank into Robert's favorite armchair and closed her eyes. "Can I get you anything?" Tommy asked. "Water? Tea?" "Bourbon." Tommy blinked. "What?" "There's a bottle of Blanton's in your father's study. Pour me 2 fingers. Neat." When Tommy returned with the glass, Eleanor took a long sip and finally spoke. "Your father and I met in law school. Did you know that?" "Yeah, you told us." "What I didn't tell you is that I was top of our class. Robert was number 3. She smiled faintly at the memory. "He used to joke that he married up." Tommy sat down across from her. "Mom, why did you never tell us you were a prosecutor?" Eleanor stared into her glass. "Because that life ended badly, and I didn't want it to touch you or your sister." "What happened?" "A case. A very dangerous case. People got hurt. And I decided that you and Jessica were more important than any career." She looked at Tommy. "I thought I made the right choice. Now I'm not so sure." "What do you mean?" "I quit everything to raise you 2. I gave up my career, my identity, everything that made me who I was. I thought that's what good mothers did, sacrifice themselves for their children." Eleanor's voice cracked slightly. "And look what happened. Jessica turned into someone I don't even recognize." "Mom, that's not your fault, isn't it? I wonder sometimes if I gave her too much, if I made life too easy, if I should have let her struggle more, learn what real consequences felt like." Tommy moved to sit on the arm of her chair. "You're an amazing mother. Jess is the one who screwed up, not you." Eleanor patted his hand. "Maybe, but today isn't over." "What do you mean?" As if on cue, Eleanor's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You think you won? This isn't over, old woman. We need that money. One way or another, we're getting it." Eleanor showed Tommy the message. His face went white. "That's Brett's number. I recognize it." "I know. Mom, we should call the police. That's a threat." "Not yet." Eleanor's voice had turned cold and calculating. "That message just gave me something more valuable than a police report. It gave me proof of motive." She stood, suddenly energized. "Tommy, I need you to do something for me. Can you access Jessica's iCloud account?" "What? How would I—" "You and Jessica shared an Apple ID when you were kids. You both used your father's credit card. Do you still remember the password?" Tommy thought for a moment. "Maybe. It was Dad's birthday and Mom's initials, right?" "Try it. I need to see her messages, her emails, everything." "Mom, that's illegal." Eleanor fixed him with a stare. "What's illegal is trying to have your mother declared incompetent to steal her money. What's illegal is drugging someone's tea to make them appear confused. What's illegal is threatening someone via text message." She leaned closer. "Jessica has already broken the law, Tommy. I'm just gathering evidence, so either help me or get out of my way." Tommy had never heard his mother talk like this. He pulled out his laptop. 20 minutes later, they'd cracked the account. What they found made Eleanor's blood run cold. Text messages between Jessica and Brett. Jessica: "The hearing was a disaster. Mom was like a completely different person." Brett: "What the hell happened? You said she was just a housewife." Jessica: "I don't know. She knew legal procedure. She had documentation. I don't understand where this came from." Brett: "We're running out of time. Antonio called me again. He wants his money by the end of the month or he's coming for us." Jessica: "I know." Brett: "So what's the plan? Because the legal route obviously isn't working." Jessica: "I have an idea, but you're not going to like it." Brett: "Just tell me." Jessica: "What if we make her actually incompetent?" The messages continued, discussing medication, dosages, and opportunities. Eleanor's hands trembled as she read them. "Mom?" Tommy's voice was scared. "Are they talking about— Are they going to hurt you?" Eleanor closed the laptop slowly. "No," she said quietly. "They're not going to hurt me, because I'm not going to give them the chance. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number she hadn't called in 30 years. Patricia Blackwood's office. How may I help you? This is Eleanor Whitmore. Tell Judge Blackwood I need to see her. Tell her it's about Vincent Torino. There was a pause. Ma'am, I don't... She'll know what it means. Have her call me at this number. Eleanor hung up and looked at Tommy. Pack a bag. You're staying here tonight. I don't want you at your apartment until this is over. Mom, what's going on? Eleanor's expression was grim. What's going on is that your sister just escalated this from a legal battle to something much more dangerous. And if she wants to play dirty, she's about to learn that her mother wrote the damn rule book. Voiceover. Eleanor. They thought they knew me, the nice old lady who baked cookies and sent birthday cards. They forgot that before I was a mother, I was something else. Someone who put murderers behind bars. Someone who never, ever lost. But I haven't forgotten. And now, neither will they. Judge Patricia Blackwood's home was a modest colonial in Newton, the kind of place that said, successful but not showy. Eleanor stood on the front porch at 9 p.m., holding a manila folder, while Tommy waited in the car. The door opened before she could knock. Patricia Blackwood stood there in jeans and a sweater, looking nothing like the stern judge from that morning. Her eyes widened. Eleanor Mitchell. The name came out like a ghost from the past. My God, it really is you. It's Whitmore now. But yeah, it's me. Patricia pulled her inside quickly, glancing at the street. You shouldn't have come to my house. If anyone finds out we have a prior relationship, they could claim bias, appeal the ruling. I know the risks, Pat. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't important. They sat in Patricia's study, a room lined with law books and framed diplomas. Patricia poured 2 glasses of wine without asking. Vincent Torino, Patricia said quietly. You mentioned that name on the phone. He died in prison 8 years ago. Lung cancer. I know. I sent flowers to his funeral. Eleanor took a sip of wine. Anonymous, of course. You sent flowers to the mobster who tried to kill you? I sent flowers to a man who died in prison because I put him there. There's a difference. Eleanor set down her glass. Pat, I need your help. Not as a judge, as someone who remembers who I used to be. Patricia studied her old friend. The woman I saw in court today, that was the Eleanor I remember from the DA's office, the iron prosecutor. I almost didn't recognize you at first, but when you started cross-examining that psychologist, she smiled slightly. It was like watching a master class. 30 years of rust, but the muscle memory's still there. So what's really going on? Your daughter's petition was bullshit. We both know that. But there's something else, isn't there? Eleanor opened the manila folder and slid it across the desk. Inside were printouts of Jessica and Brett's text messages. Patricia read them, her expression darkening. Jesus Christ, they're planning to actually harm you? To drug you? That's why I'm here. I need a recommendation for a private investigator. Someone good. Someone discreet. I know a guy. Jack Reynolds, retired Boston PD Homicide Division. He's expensive but worth every penny. Patricia wrote down a number. Tell him I sent you. He owes me a favor. Thank you. Ellie, Patricia hesitated. Why didn't you tell your kids about your past? About who you were? Eleanor was quiet for a long moment. Because I thought I was protecting them. From the violence, the threats, the ugliness of what I did for a living. She laughed bitterly. Turns out I was just making myself vulnerable. Jessica sees me as a weak old woman because that's all I ever let her see. It's not too late to change that. Isn't it? Eleanor gestured to the folder. My daughter wants to drug me into incompetence. My son-in-law is threatening me via text. And somewhere in all this is a loan shark who wants his money. I'd say it's a little late for family therapy. Patricia refilled their glasses. What are you going to do? What I do best. Build a case, gather evidence, and when the time is right, destroy them in court so thoroughly they'll never recover. That's my girl. Patricia raised her glass. To the iron prosecutor. Welcome back. Jack Reynolds looked exactly like Eleanor had imagined. Mid-50s, built like a fire hydrant, with the kind of face that had seen too much and remembered all of it. They met at a coffee shop in Cambridge, far from anyone who might recognize Eleanor. Judge Blackwood filled me in on the basics, Jack said, stirring his black coffee. Your daughter's trying to get herself declared your guardian and you think she's planning something worse. That about cover it? That's the headline. The details are more complicated. Eleanor laid out everything: the petition, the doctored evidence, the text messages, the debt to the loan shark. Jack listened without interrupting, taking notes in a small leather notebook. "Okay," he said when she finished. "First thing we need is surveillance. I'll put a tail on your daughter and her husband. See where they go, who they meet with. If there's a loan shark named Antonio, we'll find him." "Good. Second, we need to protect you. These people are desperate, and desperate people do stupid things. You got a security system at your house?" "Basic alarm. Robert installed it years ago." "Not good enough. I'll send a guy over tomorrow to upgrade it." "Cameras, motion sensors, the works." Jack leaned forward. "Mrs. Whitmore, I gotta ask, are you sure you want to go down this road? Because once we start digging, we might find things you don't want to know." Eleanor met his gaze steadily. "Mr. Reynolds, I spent 17 years as a prosecutor. I've seen bodies that would make you vomit. I've interrogated serial killers. I've gotten death threats from the mob. Whatever we find, I can handle it." Jack smiled grimly. "Yeah, Judge Blackwood said you were tough. All right, we're on. I'll start surveillance tonight." "There's one more thing." Eleanor hesitated. "My husband died 6 weeks ago. The official cause was a stroke, but I'd like to know, is there any way to check if it was really natural causes?" Jack's expression sharpened. "You think they killed him?" "I don't know. But 3 months before he died, Robert changed his will to leave almost everything to me, and now Jessica is desperate enough to drug me. So I'm asking, what if she was desperate enough to speed up her inheritance?" "Jesus." Jack rubbed his face. "Okay, I got a contact in the ME's office, guy named Ray Cooper, detective who specializes in suspicious deaths. Let me reach out to him, see if we can get another look at the autopsy report." "Can you do that without raising red flags?" "Ray owes me. He'll be discreet." Jack finished his coffee. "Mrs. Whitmore, I gotta warn you, if your husband was murdered, and if we can prove your daughter did it, this goes way beyond a conservatorship case. We're talking homicide charges." "I know. And you're okay with that? With potentially sending your daughter to prison for life?" Eleanor's voice was cold as ice. "If she killed my husband, then she's already made that choice. I'm just making sure she faces the consequences." 2 days later, Eleanor received a call from an unknown number. "Mrs. Whitmore? Detective Ray Cooper, Boston PD. Jack Reynolds asked me to take a look at your husband's case. You got a few minutes to talk?" "Of course. What did you find?" "Well, that's the thing. I found something weird. Your husband's autopsy listed cause of death as acute stroke, right? Cerebral hemorrhage, basically. But when I pulled the full tox screen..." Cooper paused. "There were traces of digoxin in his system. Pretty high levels, actually." Eleanor's hand tightened on the phone. "Digoxin, that's a heart medication." "Yeah, it's used to treat heart failure and arrhythmias. Thing is, your husband wasn't prescribed digoxin. I checked with his cardiologist, Dr. Patel, right? She confirmed he was on blood pressure meds and a statin, but no digoxin." "What does that mean?" "It means the digoxin came from somewhere else. And here's the kicker. In high doses, digoxin can cause cardiac arrhythmias that lead to stroke. Basically, someone could induce a stroke by giving someone enough digoxin, and it would look natural, especially in an elderly patient with pre-existing conditions." Eleanor felt the room tilt slightly. She sat down. "Detective Cooper, are you telling me my husband was murdered?" "I'm saying it's a strong possibility. The ME who did the original autopsy, Dr. Singh, she's good, but digoxin poisoning is tricky. It mimics natural causes. If nobody's looking for it specifically, it's easy to miss. Why was it in the tox screen at all then?" "Standard protocol. They test for a whole panel of substances, but Dr. Singh probably saw the digoxin, figured it was a prescribed medication, and didn't flag it. It's only weird if you know the deceased wasn't supposed to be taking it." Eleanor's mind was racing. How would someone get digoxin if it wasn't prescribed? That's the million-dollar question. It's a controlled substance, so you'd need access to a pharmacy or a medical professional. Or... Cooper trailed off. "Or what?" "Or you'd need to know someone in the medical field. Family member, friend, someone who could get their hands on it." Eleanor's memory flashed back to something Brett had said months ago at a family dinner. "My sister just made head pharmacist at CVS. She's killing it." "Detective Cooper, my son-in-law's sister is a pharmacist." Silence on the other end of the line. "Her name is Amanda Sullivan. She works at a CVS in Watertown." "I'll check it out. Discreetly." Cooper's voice was careful now. Mrs. Whitmore, if this was a homicide, I need to know. Do you have any reason to believe your daughter or son-in-law were involved? Eleanor told him about the will change, the debt, the conservatorship case, the threatening messages. When she finished, Cooper whistled low. Okay, this just became a whole different ballgame. I'm going to need to open an official investigation, which means Jessica will find out she's being investigated. Yeah, and if she's guilty, that might make her run. Or, Cooper didn't finish the sentence. Or make her more dangerous, Eleanor completed. Detective, can you hold off on the official investigation for a few days? Why? Because if Jessica knows she's being investigated for murder, she'll lawyer up and will never get a confession. But if she thinks she's just dealing with a conservatorship case, she might get sloppy. Make mistakes. You want to use yourself as bait. I want to give her enough rope to hang herself. Cooper was quiet. You're playing a dangerous game, Mrs. Whitmore. I know, but I'm not some helpless old woman, Detective. I was a prosecutor for 17 years. I know how to handle dangerous people. All right, I'll hold off for 1 week, but after that I'm opening the case officially, whether you like it or not. And Mrs. Whitmore, be careful. If your daughter killed once, she might do it again. That evening, Eleanor sat in Robert's study, surrounded by his books and papers. Tommy had gone back to his apartment, reluctantly, after Eleanor convinced him she'd be fine with the new security system. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found Jessica's number. Her thumb hovered over the call button. This is insane, part of her whispered. You're about to deliberately provoke someone who might have killed your husband. But another part, the part that had sent mobsters to prison, that had stared down killers in interrogation rooms, whispered back, You've handled worse. She pressed call. Jessica answered on the third ring. Mom? Hi, honey. I wanted to call and, well, clear the air after what happened in court. There was a pause. Jessica's voice was cautious. Okay? I know you were just worried about me, and maybe I overreacted. I've been thinking that perhaps we should try to rebuild our relationship. Maybe have dinner? Another pause. Eleanor could almost hear the wheels turning in Jessica's head. I'd like that, Jessica said finally. I really would. I hate that we're fighting. Me too, sweetheart. How about Thursday? You and Brett can come over. I'll make that chicken piccata you used to love. That sounds perfect. 6 o'clock? 6 o'clock. And Jessica? Eleanor kept her voice warm, vulnerable. I'm also thinking about updating my will. Making sure everything's clear, you know? I don't want any more confusion after everything. Oh, okay. That's probably smart. I'm meeting with my lawyer next week. I just wanted you to know. They said their goodbyes and hung up. Eleanor sat back and closed her eyes. The trap is set. She opened her laptop and sent an email to Jack Reynolds. Surveillance starts now. Jessica and Brett are coming to dinner Thursday at 6 p.m. I need cameras in every room. And Detective Cooper needs to know. We're going to give them the opportunity to incriminate themselves. One way or another, we'll have our answers by the end of the week. She hit send, then poured herself another bourbon. Robert's watch sat on the desk, the one he'd been wearing when he died. Eleanor picked it up, running her fingers over the crystal face. I'm going to find out what happened to you, she whispered. And if she did this, if she killed you, I'll make sure she pays for it. Outside, the autumn wind rattled the windows. The game had begun. Thursday arrived with unseasonable warmth for late October. Eleanor spent the afternoon cooking, but her mind wasn't on the chicken piccata simmering in the pan. It was on the 6 hidden cameras Jack Reynolds had installed throughout the house. Tiny things, barely visible, tucked into smoke detectors and picture frames. Testing. Jack's voice came through her earpiece. He was parked 2 blocks away in a surveillance van. I've got eyes on every room except the bathroom. And Mrs. Whitmore, try not to look at the cameras. Act natural. I've testified in front of juries, Mr. Reynolds. I think I can manage acting natural in my own home. Fair enough? Cooper's on standby too in case things go south. You've got the panic button on your phone, right? Eleanor glanced at her iPhone where a special app was open. One tap would send an alert to both Jack and Detective Cooper. I've got it. All right, they should be here in about 20 minutes. Break a leg. Eleanor removed the earpiece and tucked it into her pocket. She set the table for 3. The good china, Robert's favorite wine, fresh flowers from the garden. Everything had to look perfect. natural, like a mother trying to reconcile with her daughter. The doorbell rang at exactly 6 p.m. Jessica stood on the porch in a cream-colored sweater and dark jeans, holding a bouquet of supermarket flowers. Brett lurked behind her, hands in his pockets, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Mom," Jessica's smile was almost convincing. "These are for you." "They're lovely, honey. Come in, come in." Eleanor hugged her daughter, and for just a moment, one brief, painful moment, she remembered what it felt like when Jessica was little, when hugs were real and uncomplicated, before money and greed rotted everything. "Something smells amazing," Brett said, sniffing the air. "Is that the chicken piccata Jessica's always talking about?" "It is. Your favorite, right, Jess?" "You remembered?" Jessica's eyes were shiny. Maybe she was genuinely touched, or maybe she was just a good actress. Eleanor couldn't tell anymore. They settled in the living room with drinks. Wine for Jessica, bourbon for Brett, sparkling water for Eleanor. "I'm trying to cut back," Eleanor lied when Jessica looked surprised. "Doctor's orders, blood pressure." "That's probably smart," Jessica said. "You need to take care of yourself." "I am," Eleanor thought. "That's exactly what I'm doing." They made small talk for 20 minutes. Jessica asked about Tommy. Brett talked about a real estate deal that was gonna be huge, just huge, and Eleanor played the role of doting mother and mother-in-law. "Dinner's ready," Eleanor announced finally. "Why don't you two head into the dining room? I'll bring everything out." In the kitchen, Eleanor plated the food, her movements calm and practiced. She poured wine into 3 glasses, filling Jessica's and Brett's generously. Her own glass, the one with the small chip on the rim that only she would recognize, she filled with just a splash. She carried everything into the dining room on a tray. "This looks incredible, Mom," Jessica said. They ate. The conversation flowed. Jessica talked about a case she was working on, something about a contract dispute that Eleanor couldn't have cared less about. Brett dominated the conversation as usual, talking about himself. Eleanor watched them carefully, waiting. It happened during dessert. "I'll clear the plates," Eleanor said, standing. "There's tiramisu in the fridge." "I'll help," Jessica offered quickly. No, you stay. I've got it." Eleanor took the dinner plates to the kitchen, counting slowly. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. She grabbed the dessert plates and turned back toward the dining room. And through the doorway, she saw Jessica lean across the table, saw her pull a small vial from her purse, saw her uncap it and pour the contents into Eleanor's water glass. It took maybe 5 seconds. Jessica straightened up, glancing toward the kitchen. Eleanor ducked back quickly, her heart pounding. "Got you," she thought. "You stupid, greedy girl. I've got you." Eleanor took a deep breath, composed herself, and walked back into the dining room carrying tiramisu. "Here we go, Robert's favorite dessert." Jessica's smile was bright. Too bright. "This looks wonderful." Eleanor set down the dessert and reached for her water glass, the one Jessica had just poisoned. "Wait!" Tommy's voice came from the front door. He burst into the dining room, out of breath. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic on the Pike was insane." Eleanor had texted him an hour ago. "Come at 7:30. Exactly. Don't be early." "Tommy?" Jessica's face fell slightly. "I didn't know you were coming." "Mom invited me. That okay, sis?" His tone was just slightly hostile. "Of course. We're family." Jessica's smile was strained now. Tommy kissed Eleanor's cheek and sat down. "Ooh, tiramisu. You're the best, Mom." Eleanor stood. "I'm being a terrible hostess. Tommy, let me get you a plate. And some water. I'm parched. I'll get fresh glasses for everyone." She picked up all 3 water glasses, including the poisoned one, and carried them to the kitchen. Behind her, she heard Brett mutter, "What the hell is your brother doing here?" "Shut up," Jessica hissed back. In the kitchen, Eleanor carefully set aside the poisoned glass. She'd practiced this exact move 20 times with Jack Reynolds. She pulled out a small plastic evidence bag, used a paper towel to avoid touching it directly, and sealed the glass inside. Then she tucked the bag into a drawer beneath the sink. She filled 3 new glasses with water and brought them back to the dining room along with tiramisu for Tommy. The rest of dessert was tense. Jessica kept glancing at Eleanor's new water glass with barely concealed frustration. Brett checked his watch constantly. Tommy made awkward conversation, clearly picking up on the weird energy. Finally, at 8:30, Jessica stood. "We should probably get going. Early day tomorrow." Already? Eleanor walked them to the door. Well, thank you for coming. We should do this again soon. Definitely. Jessica hugged her, and Eleanor felt her daughter's body trembling slightly. Fear? Frustration? Rage? Drive safe, Eleanor called as they walked to their car. The moment their taillights disappeared, Tommy spun around. Did it work? Did she do it? Kitchen. Now. They rushed inside. Eleanor pulled out the evidence bag with the poisoned glass. Tommy stared at it. Holy shit. She actually tried to poison you. Language, Tommy. Mom, she tried to kill you, and you're worried about my language? Eleanor was already texting Jack Reynolds. Package is ready for pickup. Get it to Cooper ASAP for analysis. Her phone buzzed immediately. On my way. ETA 5 minutes. Also, we got everything on camera. Every second. It's beautiful. Tommy paced the kitchen. I can't believe this. I mean, I saw the messages, but to actually do it. What kind of monster is she? A desperate one. Eleanor sank into a chair, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving her shaky. Desperate people do desperate things. We're taking this to the cops, right? Right now? We will, but not yet. What, Mom? She just tried to... I know what she did, but we need to be strategic about this. Eleanor pulled up the camera footage on her laptop. There it was, crystal clear. Jessica pouring something into the water glass, looking around nervously, capping the vial. This is evidence of attempted poisoning, but it's not evidence of murder. Tommy frowned. What do you mean? Your father, Tommy. We still don't have proof Jessica killed him. This video shows she's willing to drug me. That's attempted assault, maybe attempted murder, depending on what's in that vial. But it's not enough to charge her with Robert's death. So what do we do? Eleanor's expression hardened. We get a confession. How? By making her think she's winning. That night after Tommy had gone home, Eleanor couldn't sleep. She kept seeing it. Jessica's hand, so quick and practiced, pouring poison into her mother's water. How many times had Jessica done this? Was this the first attempt, or had there been others Eleanor hadn't noticed? At 2 a.m., she gave up on sleep and went to Robert's study. She opened his desk drawer and pulled out a photograph. Robert and Eleanor on their wedding day, 1977. They looked so young, so hopeful. I'm going to find out what happened to you, she whispered to the photo. I promise. Her phone buzzed. A text from Detective Cooper. Lab results are in. Call me. It's urgent. Eleanor dialed immediately, not caring about the hour. Mrs. Whitmore? Cooper's voice was grim. We analyzed the contents of that water glass. You're not going to believe this. Try me. It was a cocktail. Diphenhydramine, that's Benadryl basically, about 300 milligrams. Alprazolam, which is Xanax, about 2 milligrams. And here's the kicker. Digoxin, about 0.5 milligrams. Eleanor's blood ran cold. The same drug that was in my husband's system. Yeah, Mrs. Whitmore, if you'd drunk that, the Benadryl and Xanax would have made you drowsy and confused. But that dose of digoxin, combined with your age, it could have caused cardiac arrhythmia, possibly fatal. She was trying to make it look like I had a stroke, just like Robert. That's what I'm thinking. And the best part? We can now establish a pattern. Same drug, same method. This is enough to reopen your husband's case as a homicide investigation. When? I'm filing the paperwork tomorrow morning. By tomorrow afternoon, your daughter will officially be a murder suspect. Eleanor was quiet for a long moment. Mrs. Whitmore, you still there? Yes, I'm here. I'm just processing. I need you to stay somewhere safe. If Jessica finds out we're investigating her, I'll be fine, Detective. I have security, and I'm not alone. After they hung up, Eleanor sat in the darkness of Robert's study, holding his photograph. Footsteps on the stairs made her look up. Tommy stood in the doorway in sweatpants and a BU t-shirt. I couldn't sleep either, he said. Figured you'd be down here. Come sit. Tommy settled into the chair across from her. So what's the plan now? Now? Eleanor set down the photograph. Now I tell you the truth. All of it. Because you deserve to know who your mother really is. Mom, I already know. No, you don't. Eleanor stood and went to the bookshelf. She pulled out a leather-bound album and handed it to Tommy. Open it. Inside were newspaper clippings, all yellowed with age. Iron prosecutor strikes again. Dia Mitchell secures conviction in mob trial. Eleanor Mitchell, Boston's toughest prosecutor. Mitchell's perfect record. 47 convictions, 0 losses. Tommy's eyes went wide. Mitchell, that was your maiden name. Keep reading. More headlines. Bomb targets prosecutor Mitchell's car, husband injured. Mitchell announces retirement after assassination attempt. End of an era, iron prosecutor hangs up her gavel. Tommy looked up, his face pale. Someone tried to kill you? His name was Vincent Torino. He was a capo in the patriarch of crime family. I prosecuted him for murder, a rival dealer he'd beaten to death with a crowbar. Eleanor's voice was steady, clinical, the way it always got when she talked about old cases. I was 8 months pregnant with you. Torino threatened me in court, said if I convicted him, my family would pay. But you convicted him anyway. I convicted him anyway. And 2 weeks later, a car bomb went off in our driveway. Your father was taking out the trash. He was lucky. Burns on his arms and back, shrapnel in his leg. But he survived. Tommy's hands were shaking. And you? I was inside. I felt the blast, ran outside, saw Robert on the ground bleeding. I went into early labor. They rushed us both to the hospital. Eleanor's voice cracked slightly. I almost lost you that night, Tommy. You were born 6 weeks premature. They didn't know if you'd make it. Jesus, Mom. That's when I quit. I couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't put my family at risk, so I gave it all up. My career, my identity, everything that made me who I was. I became just Mom. I thought that would keep you safe. She laughed bitterly. Turns out I was wrong. Tommy was crying now. Is that why you never told us? Because you were afraid? I was afraid of who I'd been. Afraid that if you knew the real me, the woman who put killers away without blinking, who could cross-examine a witness until they broke, who could send someone to prison for life without losing sleep, you'd be scared of me. I'm not scared of you. Tommy wiped his eyes. I'm freaking proud of you. You're the most badass person I've ever met. Eleanor smiled through her own tears. Language, Tommy. Seriously? You just told me you prosecuted the mob and you're still doing the mom thing? Some habits die hard. They both laughed, and for a moment it felt like old times. Then Tommy's expression grew serious. So what happens now, with Jessica? Eleanor closed the album. Now I do what I should have done 30 years ago. I stop hiding who I am. I stop pretending to be weak. She looked at her son. Your sister wanted a war. She's about to find out what happens when you declare war on someone who's never lost a battle. Are you really going to send her to prison? If she killed your father? Yes, without hesitation. Eleanor's voice was steel. I loved her, Tommy. I still do, somewhere deep down. But love doesn't mean protecting people from consequences. It means holding them accountable. That's a lesson I should have taught her a long time ago. Tommy nodded slowly. What do you need me to do? For now, get some sleep. Tomorrow, Detective Cooper opens the murder investigation. When that happens, Jessica will panic. And when people panic, they make mistakes. And we'll be waiting. Exactly. Tommy hugged his mother tight. I love you, Mom. The Iron Prosecutor or whoever you are. I love you too, honey. After Tommy went back upstairs, Eleanor sat alone in the study. She opened her laptop and began writing. Not a legal brief, not evidence documentation. A letter. Dear Jessica, by the time you read this, you'll know that I know what you did. You'll know about the investigation, about the evidence, about the cameras. I want you to understand something. I don't hate you. I pity you. Because somewhere along the way, you became someone I don't recognize. Someone who values money more than family. Someone who would kill her own father for inheritance. Was it my fault? Did I fail you as a mother? I'll spend the rest of my life wondering. But here's what I know for certain. I will not let you get away with this. Not because I want revenge, but because justice demands accountability. And I've spent my life serving justice. You wanted to know who I really am? You're about to find out. Mom. Eleanor saved the letter but didn't send it. Not yet. First, she had to finish what she started. She pulled up the security footage one more time, watching Jessica pour poison into her water glass. Game on, sweetheart, Eleanor whispered to the screen. Game on. Friday morning, Detective Cooper called Eleanor. It's official. I've opened a homicide investigation into Robert Whitmore's death. Jessica and Brett are now suspects. I'm bringing them in for questioning Monday morning." "That gives us 3 days," Eleanor said. "3 days for what?" "To get a confession." "Mrs. Whitmore, I can't let you—" "You're not letting me do anything, Detective. I'm simply having a conversation with my son. What he chooses to do with that information is up to him." Eleanor's tone made it clear the discussion was over. She hung up and called Tommy. "We need to talk. My house. Now." 30 minutes later, Tommy sat at Eleanor's kitchen table while she laid out the plan. "Jessica thinks she's in the clear. The dinner didn't work because you showed up, but she doesn't know we have the glass. She doesn't know about the cameras. She thinks she still has time. Okay? So we're going to give her a lifeline. You're going to call her. Tell her you're worried about me. Tell her you think I'm being unreasonable about the will. Make her think you're on her side." Tommy's eyes widened. "You want me to betray you?" "I want you to pretend to betray me. There's a difference." Eleanor pulled out a small device, a voice recorder, the kind lawyers used for dictation. "You'll wear a wire. Get her to talk. Get her to confess." "Mom, she's not going to just admit to murder. She will if she thinks you're her ally, if she thinks you can help her." Eleanor's expression was grim. "Your sister is drowning, Tommy. Drowning people grab onto anything, even their brother." Tommy was quiet for a long moment. Then, "What do you want me to say?" That afternoon, Tommy called Jessica from a coffee shop in Cambridge. Jack Reynolds sat 3 tables away, monitoring the wire. "Jess? Hey, it's me." "Tommy?" Jessica's voice was cautious. "What's up?" "I need to talk to you. About Mom. Is she okay?" "That's just it. I don't think she is. She's been acting really weird since Dad died. Paranoid, you know? And this whole thing with the will—" Tommy let his voice drop. "Look, I know you guys had that court thing, but between you and me, I'm starting to think you might have been right." Silence on the other end. "What do you mean?" Jessica asked carefully. "I mean maybe Mom isn't as sharp as she used to be. Some of the stuff she says doesn't make sense, and she's convinced you're trying to, I don't know, hurt her or something. It's crazy." "Tommy, I would never—" I know. That's why I'm calling. I think we need to talk. In person. Just you and me." Another pause. "Okay, where?" "That bar on Newbury Street, the one Dad used to take us to. Meet me there in an hour?" "I'll be there." The bar was dimly lit and half empty on a Friday afternoon. Tommy sat in a corner booth, the wire taped to his chest beneath his shirt, his phone recording as backup. Jessica arrived wearing yoga pants and a hoodie, looking nothing like the polished lawyer from court. She looked exhausted, scared. "Thanks for meeting me," Tommy said as she slid into the booth. "Of course. You're my brother." She ordered a vodka tonic. "So what's going on with Mom?" Tommy leaned forward conspiratorially. "She told me something crazy the other night. Said she used to be some kind of prosecutor, like a really big deal prosecutor." Jessica's face went pale. "She told you that?" "Yeah? Is it true?" I don't know. Dad mentioned something once, but I thought he was joking." Jessica's hands were shaking slightly. "Why would she hide that?" "That's not even the weirdest part. She's been, investigating you. She hired a private investigator. She's got cameras in her house. She showed me these text messages between you and Brett about needing money and—" Tommy stopped. "Jess, what's going on? Are you in some kind of trouble?" Jessica's eyes filled with tears. "Oh God, Tommy. Oh God." Hey. Tommy reached across the table. "Talk to me. Whatever it is, we can figure it out." "We can't. It's too late. We're so fucked." Jessica drained half her drink in one gulp. "I owe money, a lot of money, to a really bad person." "How much?" $2.3 million. Tommy's shocked expression wasn't entirely fake. "Holy shit. How?" "Gambling. It started small, just poker nights with friends. But then I started going to the casino, and I kept losing, and I kept betting more to try to win it back. It's like I couldn't stop." She was crying now. "Brett's business failed last year. We're drowning in debt. And then Dad got sick, and I thought—" "You thought the inheritance would save you?" "Yeah. But then the will, he left everything to Mom. And Brett's loan shark, this guy Antonio, he's threatening to kill us if we don't pay. So I thought if we could just prove Mom was incompetent if we could get control of the money, But it didn't work. No, because apparently our mother is some kind of legal genius that none of us knew about. Jessica laughed bitterly. She destroyed us in court. Tommy took a breath. Jess, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Okay? Did you have anything to do with Dad's death? The silence stretched out. Jessica stared at her drink. Jess? I didn't mean for him to die. Her voice was barely a whisper. I swear to God I didn't mean for that to happen. Tommy's heart was pounding. What did you do? Brett's sister, Amanda, she works at CVS. She got us some digoxin. We thought, if we gave Dad just a little, it would make him sick. Sick enough that he'd need help, that we could convince him to change the will before... Jessica's hands covered her face. But his heart was weaker than we thought. And one night I gave him too much and he just collapsed. Jesus Christ, Jess. I know what I did. I killed him, okay? I killed our father for money and I have to live with that every single day. She was sobbing now, her voice rising. And the worst part is it didn't even work. Mom still has everything and we're still screwed and... What about Mom? Tommy's voice was hard now. What were you planning to do to her? Jessica looked up, mascara running down her face. What? Thursday night at dinner. What did you put in her water? Jessica's face crumbled. How did you... Oh, God. You're wearing a wire, aren't you? Tommy didn't answer. You're wearing a fucking wire. Jessica stood up, knocking over her drink. You betrayed me. You tried to poison our mother. I had no choice. Antonio's going to kill us. Don't you understand? We're dead if we don't get that money. So you thought you'd kill Mom instead. I wasn't going to kill her. Just make her confused enough that the court would... Jessica stopped, looked around the bar, saw Jack Reynolds stand up from his table, showing his PI license. No. Jessica backed away from the booth. Tommy pulled out his phone, stopped the recording. I'm sorry, Jess, I really am. But you killed Dad. You tried to hurt Mom. I can't protect you from this. Jessica stared at her brother like she'd never seen him before. Then she turned and ran out of the bar. Jack was already on the phone. She's running. Black hoodie, gray yoga pants, heading north on Newbury. Tommy sat alone in the booth, staring at the spilled vodka spreading across the table. His sister was a murderer, and he'd just gotten her confession on tape. Monday morning, the courtroom was packed. Word had gotten out that something big was happening in the Whitmore case. Jessica sat at the petitioner's table with a new lawyer, her third, after Sarah Mitchell had quit. Brett sat in the gallery, flanked by 2 police officers. Detective Cooper had arrested him Sunday night. Eleanor entered alone, carrying her briefcase. Tommy sat in the front row behind her. Judge Patricia Blackwood called the court to order. This is a continuation of case number 23P1847. Ms. Whitmore Sullivan has filed an emergency petition for temporary conservatorship. However, I understand there have been some developments. Detective Cooper stood. Your Honor, I'm Detective Raymond Cooper, Boston PD. I'm here to inform the court that Jessica Whitmore Sullivan is currently under investigation for the murder of Robert Whitmore and the attempted murder of Eleanor Whitmore. The courtroom exploded into noise. Jessica's lawyer jumped up. Your Honor, this is outrageous. These charges are completely unfounded. They're not unfounded, Eleanor said, standing. They're documented, recorded, and provable. Judge Blackwood banged her gavel. Order, Mrs. Whitmore, do you have evidence to present? I do, Your Honor. Eleanor opened her briefcase. First, I'd like to enter into evidence this water glass, which contains traces of diphenhydramine, alprazolam, and digoxin, the same drug that was found in my late husband's system. My daughter added these substances to my drinking water on Thursday evening. We have video footage. She pulled out a laptop and played the security camera footage. The courtroom watched in silent horror as Jessica poured the vial into Eleanor's glass. Jesus, someone whispered in the gallery. Second, Eleanor continued, I have a recording of my daughter confessing to poisoning my husband with digoxin, resulting in his death. She made this confession to my son, Thomas Whitmore, on Friday afternoon. She played the audio. Jessica's voice filled the courtroom. I didn't mean for him to die. Brett's sister got us some digoxin. I gave him too much and he just collapsed. I killed him, okay? I killed our father. The color drained from Jessica's face. Her lawyer was frantically whispering to her, but she just sat there, frozen. Your Honor, Eleanor said quietly. My daughter is not incompetent. She's not confused. She's a murderer. And she tried to frame me as mentally unfit so she could steal the money she killed her father to obtain. Judge Blackwood's expression was granite. Ms. Whitmore Sullivan, stand up. Jessica stood on shaking legs. I am dismissing your petition with prejudice. You are barred from ever filing for guardianship or conservatorship of your mother again. Furthermore, I am forwarding all evidence in this case to the district attorney's office. She looked at Detective Cooper. Detective, you may proceed. Cooper stepped forward with handcuffs. Jessica Whitmore Sullivan, you're under arrest for the murder of Robert Whitmore and the attempted murder of Eleanor Whitmore. You have the right to remain silent. As he read Jessica her rights, Eleanor watched her daughter's face. She was looking for something. Remorse, maybe. Regret, understanding. But all she saw was fear and rage. Mom! Jessica screamed as Cooper cuffed her. Mom, please, you have to help me. I'm your daughter. Eleanor's voice was steady. You stopped being my daughter the moment you killed your father. Tommy was crying in the front row. Even Judge Blackwood looked shaken. As they led Jessica away, she looked back one last time. I'm sorry, she mouthed. Eleanor turned away. That evening, Eleanor sat in her living room with a glass of bourbon and an unopened envelope. Robert's sister, Grace, had called that afternoon. Ellie, there's something you need to know. Robert made me promise not to tell you unless things got bad. I think they're bad enough now. Grace had driven over immediately, bringing the envelope. Now Eleanor held it, her name written in Robert's handwriting on the front. Tommy sat beside her. What is it? I don't know. Grace said your father left it with her years ago. Instructions to only give it to me if Jessica ever tried to contest the will. Do you want me to leave? No, stay. Eleanor opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a letter, dated 3 months before Robert's death. My dearest Ellie, if you're reading this, I was right. Jessica has gone after the money and probably tried to hurt you in the process. I'm so sorry I didn't stop this sooner. There's something I never told you. Something I should have told you years ago, but I was afraid it would destroy our family. Do you remember the car bombing, when Vincent Torino tried to kill us? You were 8 months pregnant with Tommy. The blast put you in a coma for 3 days. The doctors told me you'd lost the baby, our daughter. She was stillborn. I was destroyed. You were unconscious, possibly dying, and our daughter was gone. But there was a nurse, Mary Chen. She made a terrible decision. There was another woman in the hospital that night who died in childbirth. Her baby survived, a healthy girl. Mary switched them. She put that baby in your arms and told everyone she was ours. That baby was Jessica. I found out when Jessica was 10, she needed a blood transfusion after a car accident. The blood types did not match. Neither of us could have been her biological parents. I tracked down Mary Chen. She confessed everything on her deathbed. I never told you because you loved Jessica so much. She was yours in every way that mattered. I couldn't take that away from you. But if you're reading this, it means Jessica has shown you who she really is. And I want you to know, this isn't your fault. You didn't fail as a mother. You loved a child who wasn't yours, and she still chose darkness over light. Whatever happens, remember, you gave her everything. If she threw it away, that's on her, not you. I love you, Ellie. Always. Robert Eleanor's hands were shaking so badly she dropped the letter. Tommy picked it up, read it, and went white. Mom, Jessica isn't. She's not my biological daughter. Eleanor's voice was hollow. The daughter I carried for 8 months died in that bombing, and I never knew. They sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Tommy said, Does it change anything? What? Does it change how you feel? About Jessica? About what she did? Eleanor thought about it. No, she said finally. I raised her. I loved her. I gave her everything I had. Biology doesn't change that. She wiped her eyes. If anything, it makes it worse. Because I can't blame genetics. I can't say she inherited some flaw. The truth is simpler. I loved her, and it wasn't enough. That's not true. Isn't it? Somewhere along the way, I failed to teach her the difference between right and wrong, between love and money, and now she'll spend the rest of her life in prison because of it. Tommy hugged his mother. You didn't fail, Mom. You did everything right. She's the one who made the wrong choices. Eleanor held her son and let herself cry, really cry, for the first time since Robert's death. She cried for her husband, for her stillborn daughter, for the child she'd raised who'd become a monster, for 30 years of lies and secrets and love that wasn't enough. And when the tears finally stopped, she felt something she hadn't felt in months: free. The Massachusetts Superior Court was quieter than the probate court, more serious. Eleanor sat in the gallery, watching as the jury filed in. Jessica stood at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit. She'd lost weight, looked older, broken. Brett had taken a plea deal, manslaughter and conspiracy, 15 years. He'd testified against Jessica in exchange for the reduced sentence. The trial had lasted 3 weeks. The evidence was overwhelming: the recorded confession, the video of the poisoning attempt, Brett's testimony, Amanda Sullivan's confession about providing the digoxin. The jury had deliberated for 4 hours. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" the judge asked. "We have, Your Honor." Eleanor held her breath. "On the count of murder in the first degree, guilty. On the count of attempted murder, guilty." Jessica's knees buckled. Her lawyer caught her. Eleanor felt Tommy's hand squeeze hers. She didn't cry. She'd cried enough. The judge scheduled sentencing for 2 weeks later. Life imprisonment, possibility of parole after 25 years. As they led Jessica away, she looked back at Eleanor one last time. Eleanor met her eyes and nodded slightly. "I'm sorry this is how it ended," the gesture said. "But this is what justice looks like." 3 months later, Eleanor stood at Robert's grave with fresh flowers. Spring had come early, and the cemetery was full of blooming trees. "I sold the house," she told him. "Too many ghosts. I bought a condo in Cambridge near Tommy and his family. It's smaller, but it's enough." She knelt and arranged the flowers, white roses, his favorite. "I'm volunteering now, at the Legal Aid Society, helping elderly people who are being financially abused by their families. Turns out Jessica's case isn't unique. It happens all the time. So I'm using my experience, both as a prosecutor and as a victim, to help others." A breeze rustled the trees. "I visit her once a month. Jessica. She doesn't talk much, just sits there. Sometimes she cries, sometimes she's angry, but I keep going. Because that's what mothers do, even when their children have done the unforgivable." Eleanor stood, brushing grass from her knees. "I also started a scholarship fund, the Robert Whitmore Scholarship for Legal Ethics at Boston College. It's for students who want to practice law with integrity, who want to make a difference." She touched the headstone one last time. "I miss you, but I'm okay. Better than okay, actually. For the first time in 30 years, I know who I am. Not just somebody's wife or somebody's mother. Eleanor Whitmore, the Iron Prosecutor. I'm finally comfortable being both." As she walked back to her car, Tommy was waiting with his 6-year-old daughter, Lily. "Grandma!" Lily ran up and hugged her legs. Eleanor scooped her up. "Hey, sweetheart, ready for ice cream?" "Yes. Can I get chocolate?" "You can get whatever you want." As they drove away from the cemetery, Eleanor looked in the rearview mirror one last time. She'd thought justice would feel like victory, like triumph. Instead, it felt like closure, like freedom, like finally, after everything, being able to breathe again.